Hello YouTube, it's time for another H1 project. So this week's project, we're going to be mounting the spare tire and wheel onto this truck. Now these things are pretty big. I mean, this is 37-inch tire, 20-inch rim, and surprisingly there are not a lot of options for mounting spares onto these trucks. If you get the, like this one, the Predator Search and Rescue bumper, they make an add-on spare tire carrier. But I don't like the tire on the back of the tailgate. I think it just takes away from the lines of this truck, and it's just a big, giant, bulky weight hanging off the back there. You could go to places like Rubber Duck and HummerCore and Predator, and they make some giant over-the-top racks, put your spare tire way up in the air. You can still utilize your bed that way. But you know, these beds are really small anyway. You put an ice chest, couple lawn chairs in here, and you know, this thing is full. It wasn't really made for a lot of high capacity storage, so why not use it for something, you know, other than just putting junk in it by getting the spare tire down inside there. So what I ended up finding was this bed mount spare tire holder by Titan Industries, I believe, and it was like 300 bucks. And I got this one on Amazon, and it was free shipping, and it got here pretty quick. If you go to Titan's website and order it, they charge you like a $70 or $80 handling fee. I mean, is that like to put the box in the truck? I don't know. But if you go to Amazon, there's no charge for that. It's a lot cheaper that way. You'll save some money. You'll get it pretty fast. And I was really reluctant to buy this thing because let me show you the sheet here. So this is off their website. I got the dimensions here. It says front to back is 47 3/4 inches front to back. And the beds on these H1s are not that, they're not that deep. So if we get a tape measure over here, the bed of this thing is only, it's about 43 and change. So I thought, well, you know, 43 versus 47, I thought maybe I could buy this thing, and if I thought maybe just, you know, cutting the bars and shortening it up and doing something to it. But I get it here, I get it out of the box, and look at this thing. This thing is barely 30 inches long. So 30 inches, it actually fits up in there really nice. And a lot of room to play around. And so it fits up in there well. And a couple things though, they give you, when you get this thing out of the box, they give you this this mounting stud right here, this big spud to put your wheel on. Well, one, it's not tall enough for the offset on my wheels. And two, if you look at this thing, you put a square across there, this thing is horrible. I mean, it is not flat. So I know the wheel is only going to sit around the outside, but still, there's a lot of potential for stuff just wobbling around. And I didn't want to use that. I would have had to build it up with a spacer. And they give you this big rubber block, and it's almost like a hard plastic, but they give you this block to go on here, and it's kind of like a cushion for the wheel. And then they give you this giant thing. It looks like the giant pre-runner bar. You can put it down in there. It's got holes. You can set the height, and you know, you can get that, and then you can have one of those. But I didn't want this giant thing hanging off the top of the wheel. I think it just, I kind of like the pre-runner look of how the mount is shaped, but I don't like this thing, so not going to use it. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to decapitate this thing right here, and I'm going to grind this weld off and make it completely flush. And then there's a little bit at the bottom here. I'm going to grind that flush also. And another thing is they give you 8 slots to mount this thing, but I didn't want to drill a ton of holes in the bed of my truck. So what I ended up doing was taking out the tie down hooks just like this. There's 2 back there, and there's one, I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's another one back here in the middle. There was a hook right there, and this one just goes through. There's pretty thick metal there, but those are reinforced. There's already a thread up in there, and you can actually put a bolt down in there and suck it up pretty tight. So what I did is I made a bunch of adapter brackets. And the brackets will allow me to bolt this thing to the bracket, and then the brackets will bolt to the factory locations. That way, I don't have to drill any holes in the bed of the truck, and if I ever take it out, it'll be like it never happened. So to make all this work, this is all the stuff that's got to be used to put this thing in. So I know this looks like an incredible amount of hardware to mount a spare tire, but everything on this table has a purpose. And so what I did for a mount is I was able to find an old bad stock spindle, and I cut the back of that off and I drilled some holes in it, and I machined a couple flats through here for bolts. And this is a steel block that I made, and this steel block will bolt this up to here, and then this steel block right here will get sandwiched between these two clamshell halves right here with all these bolts. And the nice thing about this is it will ride up and down. It will slide up and down this tube right here, and it'll allow me to position the tire wherever I want. Maybe move it down a little bit, move it up a little bit. So there's some flexibility there. This plate here goes on the back, on the inside of the tire mount. And I figure while I'm putting all this stuff together, I'm putting in the CO2 bottles with the clamps that will bolt across this plate right here. That will give me the control for my ARB air lockers, which is the future project. But there's some other caps that I made here that will go inside the wheel. And then to finish it off, I went to a company called True Spike, and they make some really nice. This is going to dress it up a little bit. It's going to give a little bit of a medieval look. But this, and then the sleeve, which goes over the nut, lock nut. And it's a nice locking lug nut. We're kind of a 5-sided thing, but there's a thread on top that this screws into. So that should dress it up kind of nice. And so anyway, all this stuff is ready to go down to powder coat, probably tomorrow. And I will get this stuff back in a day or so. And then meanwhile, I will be, like I said, I'm going to decapitate this piece right here and just get rid of that. And there's really no way to mount or bolt anything to that. It's just kind of like a hollow welded up piece. But this should go in pretty nice. And then I went with the super strong 12-point bolts that are going to hold everything together. So I'll be able to crank down on it pretty good. And this will be the air manifold. Once the ARB lockers come, the solenoids plug into this. This plugs into the bottles. And they say this 20-ounce CO2 bottles from Power Tank will engage a set of ARB lockers over 500 times on a single cylinder. And then the kit just gives you a second cylinder to have as a backup. So those get mounted on there. But for now, let me get going sawing on this thing. I'm going to load all these parts up and get them down to powder coat. And once we get some stuff put together, we'll come back and go from there. Okay, we are back. Everything came back from powder coat, and the guys over at Bricks Powder Coating and Sandblasting in Phoenix do a fantastic job. They get stuff out really quick. They do quality work, and I've used them for a ton of stuff. So anyway, here's all the parts. We're ready to go together, so we'll get started putting some of these brackets into the truck. And then while I had a minute of downtime, as promised, I went ahead and took this thing and just cut it off, and a Sawzall went right through that. And then it basically just left the tube welded inside there. I got the bottom nice and smooth. And instead of having this thing repowder coated, I just went ahead and did a little Earl Scheib in the area where I grounded off here, and it's going to get all covered up, so that doesn't matter. So it's going to look fine. So anyway, let me get the first couple brackets put in the truck, and I'll show you where they go. I got a couple of brackets that I need to bolt together first. So this one goes on the other side underneath here, and that's basically just a spacer since the back bolt in the truck is recessed. So this spacer is going to go right there just to make this flat across the top here, so when I pull down on that bolt, it doesn't collapse anything and everything stays nice and flat. So let me get those put in the truck here real quick, and then we'll go on to the next part. Okay, so I got the adapter brackets bolted in. They're not tight yet. I'll wait till everything else is sitting on top of them to before I snug everything up. So the plate in the back goes in with the two center bolts that are existing, and then the outer bolts right there, and over there is where the tire carrier is going to bolt down. Now these two brackets in the middle right here have slots in them, and then the slots are going to be for that plate that goes on the back of the tire carrier for the CO2 tanks, just to keep the bottom of it from moving around a little bit. And this one in the back here, got one bolt down here. It's hard to get that nut up under there by yourself without it spinning. But there's going to be a big excess section right here, and I think this right here might be a perfect place to mount that Halon fire extinguisher. It'll be tucked in nice behind the bed somewhere, and under the edge of the tire. So hopefully something easily accessible, but not too much in plain view. So anyway, now that those are in, I'm going to go ahead and get this thing up in there. And I got to flip it around, and then I'll get the 8 bolts started on that. And then once the 8 bolts are started, I'll go ahead and just draw everything up and make it tight, and then on to the next step. Okay, it's in and everything is tightened up. So all the bolts went in real well. This thing's snugged up, just incredibly solid. I mean, there is absolutely no movement on that. And I have no worries that this thing is going to go anywhere. So now that that's all tight, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to mount this plate to the back of the carrier for the CO2 tanks. Now later on down the road, when I put my ARB lockers in, these CO2 tanks will power that through the solenoids that go into this manifold right here. So right now, I just put a bunch of plugs in here. I don't want a bunch of dirt and junk getting in there in the meantime, so I'm just going to leave the plugs in until I'm ready to do the final connections on this thing. And you know, when I hook up the air lines for this, they're going to have to go down through the bed somehow. But I have a plan for that. I know I didn't want to drill holes in the bed for the tire carrier, but for this, I'm going to have to make a nice little transition plate to go through the bed for the control wires for the solenoid and the 2 air lines that got to come off the solenoids. So anyway, time to bolt this thing up. It just goes in with 4 bolts right here. And what I did is I ended up using the nutserts like they have all over the rest of the body of the truck. Like right there, you just drill a hole and you squeeze those things in like rivets. So I'm going to slide that thing in there. The bottom of the plate is going to sit in those little slots down at the bottom to keep the bottom of that thing from moving around. And it's going to be pretty solid. So get that put in here and we'll come back in a couple of minutes. Okay, so that went in really well. So the plate's bolted in. It feels really solid. I think these tanks will be easily accessible, but they will also be out of the way. The spare tire is going to cover up a lot of that. So you won't really see much of it in there when the tire is put on. So the bottle's in there now, but you know, gonna need a few more dollars before I start my ARB air locker project, and that's gonna be another video down the road probably. But now the next step is to put in the part that actually holds the wheel on, and that's all this stuff right here. So I'm gonna get these parts set up, and then once we get this positioned and snugged up a little bit, I'll be able to put the tire up in there. And then we can slide it up and down and position it where we want it. Take tire back off, do the final torque on everything, and then we can mount the tire and finish this thing up. So I'll be back in a minute. All right, so got most of that bolted in. Now you can kind of see how that piece of steel is sandwiched in between here. So I've got steel for these bolts to run into. And these outer blocks here are made out of aluminum, and they're basically just clamping that piece of steel in there. I don't have the lower 2 bolts in yet. Those are the ones that are going to do a lot of the clamping. So right now we're going to get the tire up in there and put it up on the lugs and see if we need to slide this thing up and down. And then once we do that, we can tighten everything down, and then we can get the tire mounted. So so far this has turned out pretty good. I really like it. Now the wheel and tire are going to cover up pretty much this entire block, so you're not going to see that much of it. And it actually doesn't stick up too high either. But it's I think it's going to work good, and I'm pretty happy with it so far. So let's get the tire up there and see how it looks. Okay, so there it is, final resting place. I set it to where I had about 1.5 inch clearance between the tire and the tailgate. And then that's about as low as I want to go, and I can still kind of see the LED bar over the top of the tire. If that doesn't work out, I could always raise the LED bar, put it on the top side of the light bar. But this turned out really nice. So I got to get the tire back off, and I'll make all the final do all the final torquing on that center block, and then we can go ahead and bolt the tire up for the last time. And that tire is about 140 pounds. It's a whole lot of fun to get it up there without tearing anything up. So let me get this back down. Let me get all the stuff in the middle tightened up, get the tire remounted, and then we'll wrap this video up. Okay, so this is the final resting place for this spare tire. So I can't even describe how solid this thing is. You try to get up here and rock this thing and move it, and it doesn't go anywhere. I mean, it feels really good. And then the tire is about a ½ inch or so off the top of the frame there, so the tire does not touch the frame, and you don't want the tire rubbing on the frame and taking your finish off and possibly rubbing a hole in your sidewall over time. So you want the tire to be free floating all the way around. But so everything's in, it's all bolted down, but then we got this giant hole in the middle of the wheel. So what are we gonna do about that? So anyway, I talked earlier about the True Spike lug nuts, and those are pretty cool. I'm going to show you how those work real quick. So you've got this sleeve that covers the lug nut, and it just drops over the top like that. And then this spike, there's an O-ring right there. So when you go to tighten this up, it compresses that O-ring and it gives some resistance so it doesn't come loose. So anyway, that will go there. And the other parts I have over here is this this great little center cap right here. And all this cap does is provide me 8 threaded studs to mount the cover cap on. So this will drop down inside here, and it gets 4 cap screws down inside there, and that gives me 4 threaded studs, or 8 threaded studs. It's been a long day, I'm getting tired, and it's about 105 in my garage here today. And then the last thing will be this cover right here will drop down, and it will bolt on to the center there and finish that off. And then I've got those black oxide stainless acorn nuts and washers that will cover that up. So let me get the rest of these things bolted on real quick, and then we'll look at the final project. Well, since I have no more parts left on my table, I am assuming this job is done. So here it is, the finished product. And I really like how solid this thing went in. It does not move at all. I mean, there's no give on that wheel whatsoever. If I had used that piece right there with a big old dome top on it, this wheel, like I said, is 140 pounds. I think it would have been just wobbling all over the place going down the road. Even with a giant rubber block under there, it would have been moving all over, and I wasn't good with that. So this thing here does not move at all. And like I said, the tire is about a ½ inch off the frame, so it doesn't touch. But so that's it. I think it looks pretty good. Got that center cap in, got the spikes put on, and I've never paid $300 for 8 lug nuts before, but hey, what are you gonna do, right? So anyway, that's about it. I think this is my last project for summer. It's going into July here in Phoenix, and yeah, it's gonna be hot, so I'm done for now. But anyway, this truck was out at Predator in Vista, California a little while ago getting a turbo upgrade, and Ryan, the owner of Predator, did a really nice vlog on this truck, some of the work that was done to it. And I left the link down below if you want to watch that, and talks a little bit about the Duramax conversion and a lot of the accessories from Predator that went on this truck, and 6-speed Allison, all that fun stuff. So we did the 5 DSP tune, so I got the selector switch in the cab, and this thing just runs out fantastic. So anyway, check out that other video in the description below. And that's about it for summer. And you guys, thanks for watching. Hope you got some info out of this, and we'll see you sometime down the road.